Hello, this is Derek from VolitionRecordingStudio.com. Hope you're doing well, and thank you for watching this video. For those of you who are on this channel for the first time, please consider subscribing to this channel for more free tutorials on mixing and audio engineering related content. So today we're going to go over one of the first steps to an amazing mix. So the first one being gain staging. What is gain staging? So gain staging is essentially a fancy way to say volume adjustment, and unlike volume fader adjustment where we pull up and down, gain staging actually is focused on the actual loudness or dynamics of the audio track that was recorded. In this case, we want to go over all these tracks that make up our song and make sure they're at a really good level. So a good way to start to check what gain staging is all about is that we want to make sure that we have everything set at 0, so that's a great accurate way to tell how currently loud the track is, and then we want to decide if we need to bring that up or bring that down. So what I mean by saying that is that every track you see here all goes into the master track output here at the very end. 1 second here. So they all go into here. So the reason why gain staging is so important is that you're kind of, when you do that, you kind of free up more space for your plugins. Your plugins, in fact, actually do add more gain and to your output here. So that's the bad thing that can happen is that when you have too much, if you don't gain stage, your mix will end up sound really distorted, and then when you go to master it, especially, it'll sound very compressed or very distorted. So we want to stay away from that as much as possible. And when we do gain stage, it actually will also benefit. Another thing is that you can also fix kind of the volume dynamics, the volumes of other tracks, because maybe sometimes you might notice like certain things being too loud over other things when it shouldn't be. So that's kind of where gain staging comes into play as well, as well with the static mixing or the volume fader adjustment, which will be talked about in another 2 videos. So today we're going to focus on gain staging and how we can get started with that. All right. So when we go to gain staging, you want to go to essentially the loudest part of the song. So pretty much where pretty much if 90% of your tracks is playing on that part. So that's a good way to kind of tell, because that's actually where most of the volume will come from. It's that big build up there. So let's go take a look at the volume fader part. So what our goal is that we're trying to achieve is that we want to make sure we want to do those 2 things, free up more space for more headroom space for our master volume fader here. And the second thing is that we're trying to fix any imperfections or maybe some parts that sound a little too quiet and want to bring it up and bring the louder parts down. So let's take a look at a few tracks here. So let's take a look at our guitar. So I'm going to highlight it right here for you to see. So gain staging, what we want to do is that we want to take a look and kind of measure the level of it. So we're going to take a look at our volume fader, make sure it's currently at 0. So we're going to go over there. My apologies, still kind of new to doing this. Want to make sure that we find that part and kind of check the level on it. So I'm going to press play here. So let's take a look at the volume. So as you can see, for this volume track specifically, the guitar is kind of, it peaks a bit because the guitarist is plucking a little too hard. So it's at a 12 volume, which is pretty moderate, a very good level to start off with. But considering that there's actually a lot of tracks we have for this song, it's probably better if we bring it down a bit, because again, we got to remember that we want our lower instruments like our bass, our kick drum, or wants to cut through a little bit more, because again, when it comes to our mids and highs, it does cut through a little bit more easier than lows in general. So let's take a look at gain staging. So in this case, it was hitting around that 12 area. So let's actually try bringing it down a little bit. So let's minimize the screen. Let's go over here. So it might work a little bit different. The layout might be a little bit different depending on your DAW, but they all essentially have this function. So If you don't know how to do it, it's probably best to YouTube or even Google how to find your gain staging area. All right. So in this case, we're gonna go to this guitar. It's about halfway through the full duration, the full length of this audio clip. Generally, that's kind of where I will find my gain staging because I'm using Cubase here. So I'm gonna click right here. As you can see, it's at 0. So this is actually the recorded volume level without me tweaking it at all. So in this case, if you push it up, it will be louder. If you bring it down, it will be quieter. So in this case, we want to make it a little bit more quieter just to compensate the other volumes, because this is a very massive track amount of tracks for a song. So I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. Let's go to about a 4 in this case. Yeah, about there is a good area. So I'm going to bring up our volume fader area to kind of check the level now. So I'm going to press play. Alright, so now you probably noticed that the general volume has kind of dropped down a little bit under 12 now. So it's about consistently around the 18 area there and negative 18. And it sometimes peaks at 12. So that's a pretty good level for guitars. I'm going to do another few instruments to let you kind of hear the difference from before and after. So let's go over to the bass. So I'm going to add that bass there. I'm going to pull up the volume fader once again. Alright, so the bass is hitting around an 18. So that's a pretty good level. Generally, for our bass and our kick drum, we kind of generally want it to be a little bit more louder in terms of the volume length, because that is generally covered by the guitars, or the vocals do tend to cover those guys up a lot. So you want to make sure that they cut through nicely. In this case, we're only having 2 instruments so far out of like about 37, I believe. So it's a little bit easier to hear. But again, you got to account that you want to make sure that you can hear those instruments when all of them are playing and when the mix is finally at a complete stage. So I'm gonna do another one just to double check here. We'll go with the kick drum in this case. Yeah, let's go with the kick in and just kind of check the level there. Alright, as you can see, it peaks around a 12. So our kick is kind of the foundation of the song. So we kind of want to bring that up a little bit compared to the bass. So maybe we'll want to bring it up like a few dB here. Generally, I'm going to probably start with the 4 in this case. Alright. So let's take a look. Alright, as you guys can probably hear, you can kind of hear the bass, the kick drum is cutting through a little bit more better with the bass and the electric guitar. I believe the electric guitar can come down just a little bit more, but in this... Yeah, we can probably bring the guitar just a little tap it down, because again, mids and highs do cut through a little bit easier than lows in general, so let's cut it down a little bit just to give it more room. Alright, let's now take a look at our master volume since we gain stage it now. Alright, so you probably all have noticed by now that the kick and so far with the bass and the guitar and the kick drum is hitting about a 12. It does sometimes peak around 6. That's a acceptable level. The drummer is probably hitting too hard. So in this case, like, you don't have to be exactly 100% accurate in terms of your gain staging, because volume, when you actually go to do static mixing, which is the volume fader adjustment here, that will actually help bring down the volume a bit more. But in this case, the whole goal with doing gain staging is to manage the individual tracks so that they're at a really good level. So in this case, if you can aim around like the consistency of the track playing around kind of going over 12 a little bit, that's totally fine. And if it peaks around 6, that's totally fine. That's kind of where that'll be a good area to hit when you go to do your gain staging. So yeah, so I hope that this gain staging tutorial kind of helped you out in how to do gain staging. It is probably one of the stages where you do rely on your eyes, compared to where pretty much the rest of like the next few steps where you purely rely on your hearing. So again, I hope that this helped you out, and this is part 1 of 5 for the 5 secrets to an amazing mix. So thank you for watching, and if you like what you saw today, please consider to subscribe. Thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoy your day, and see you guys next time.